Cool, right. So I was just
No
checking
worries.
another screen. I've had the nod, so it's over to you, as I say, Luke. The stage, the virtual
It's
stage is
mine.
yours. We'll let you dive into the presentation, and I'll save those questions for
All
towards the
right,
end.
fantastic, mate. Sounds good to
Good
me.
luck.
Okay, let's do this. First of all, let's share my screen and blind everyone with my face. Okay. Um, this isn't what I expected because now I have two screens, but this one is the presentation view. So let's try that again real quick. Here we go. And then you go and click the one button. Fantastic. Screen two, over here, regex stuff. That's better. So hopefully now everyone can see my slides, right? There we
Perfect.
go.
Like a
All
pro.
right, so a couple of things. First of all, this ceiling is proper low, so I'm not going to stand up today. That's my excuse at least. Number two, I have made an investment in an Amazon purchase yesterday, and it's a ring light. And I just want to literally show everybody how awesome it is. So I'm going to turn it off. See, no one can see my face anymore. And I'm going to turn it back on, and it's incredible. It gives me this brilliant, radiant glow. So without that, that's not important. Let's get started on the presentation, how to nail Google Analytics for e-commerce. All right. So who am I? I'm an e-commerce consultant. This is what I do. It's what I love. It's what I enjoy. It's what I eat, sleep, and I better because I've been doing it for years. But I've worked with some people, done some stuff. E-commerce is what I love. I think I've already said that. So that's not important. Now I want to get into the meat of this presentation. But first, I want to share a story with you. And that story specifically is called, I can't replicate the issue, so I'm going to close the ticket story. Now, if anyone has ever been with developers or is a developer or has worked alongside developers, this will be something you can absolutely relate to. So here's Jeremy Corbyn. And it's not really Jeremy Corbyn, it's just a man that looks like Jeremy Corbyn and is pretty pissed off. For the story, this is one of the customers that worked at a client of mine. And this is just one of many customers that used to call on a weekly basis and complain about the checkout, right? So the customer would be calling, Jeremy Corbyn would be calling and say, look, I've got money in my account. I know it's there. I've just used my card at like Tesco or Co-op half an hour ago. Why is it I can't buy my stuff online? He was frustrated. And of course, he wasn't the only one. So there was clearly a problem here. But first, before I continue this story, I want to introduce you to two more people. And those are Dave and Lucille. So who's Dave? Well, Dave is a digital manager at an e-commerce store. He uses Google Analytics on a daily basis, and he is an enhanced e-commerce wizard. But one downside about Dave, he uses out-of-the-box Google Analytics, which isn't great. And the problem with out-of-the-box GA is that it's cool at telling Dave about the sales he and his company have won, but it's not really good at telling him about the sales that they've missed and precisely why they have missed them. So if you use GA, if you live in the world of e-commerce, or you have e-commerce clients or work for an e-commerce brand, this will be a screen that'll be familiar to you, the e-commerce checkout and shopping activity reports. The problem with these is they're tedious. You have to go into rabbit holes and spend a heck of a lot of time digging for information. So the problem with all of this is, one, it costs a lot of time, but it also means that Dave's GA rig only delivers indicators, insights, not solid proof. And it's the solid proof that we need. So I think doesn't get prioritized in the world of development, right? If you've got I think, a hunch, I've got a suspicion of, no one cares. They want hard proof before it even begins to become a priority in the development queue. So secondly, I want to introduce you to Lucille. And if you can see like weird hazy lines across this image, you're damn right. It's because I didn't buy the rights to this because I am cheap. But Lucille is a digital manager at an e-commerce store. She uses Google Analytics frequently. She's also an enhanced e-commerce wizard, but she has gone far and beyond the out-of-the-box configuration for Google Analytics. So Lucille's killing it right now because she can get to that sweet, solid proof that Dave is desperate for. But she can even then go ahead and attach even more high resolution data to strengthen her findings and research when she's looking into Google Analytics or whatever she's analyzing at the time. Which it also means that Lucille has killer stats that the board, her stakeholders, her peers simply cannot ignore. So she's able to get tickets prioritized higher and closed a heck of a lot faster. And on top of that, she's also saving the devs a bucket load of time by pinpointing the precise issues. So everybody loves Lucille. She's saving people time, she's getting their stuff done faster, and she's not actually spending time in reports like this. She's not actually spending time in this shopping report or this checkout flow report, which is helpful from a very top level point of view. But as we said before, it doesn't get into that juicy detail. So Lucille's not spending time going into rabbit holes and burning daylight just trying to find a specific problem. She's using custom reports that look like this. I'm pointing to my screen as if you can see what I'm pointing at. You can't, so you just have to assume. When I go over here, I'm pointing to my slides. All right, cool. So don't worry about this specifically too much. I'm going to go back to it in a second. But to continue the story, the Jeremy Corbyn story, the I've got a ticket and the close story. Lucille had a specific problem, or the business had a specific problem. And that problem was that when Jeremy Corbyn was, of course, making all these complaints alongside many of the customers, Lucille was able to identify, using this, that she found a particular error message that constantly fired at the checkout that was happening for a lot of different customers. So what Lucille decided to do is Google, what this means, error 1007, and Eureka. She found that error 1007 on the SafePay API documentation is the card number has failed our validity checks and is invalid. Like, it's just basically posh talk for wrong card number, mate. So what Lucille did is she changed that error message to make it a lot easier to understand. Invalid card number, please check and retry. And the results, well, a £30,000 uplift in sales virtually overnight. Because Lucille's not spending time looking in those drop-offs, she's able to get to granular data. And I'm going to talk you through that. So for the rest of the time during this session, I'm going to be talking you through how to build a badass Google Analytics rig just like Lucille. All right, so buckle up. If you weren't listening before, because webinars are hard and they're difficult and you might be busy and distracted or on the phone or sending an email, I would suggest you stop and you properly pay attention if you want to get the best out of this presentation, because this is where the juicy stuff is. All right, so custom definitions, first of all. Why are they awesome? Well, I'll tell you, they're awesome because they allow you to send custom data into Google Analytics. Now, on top of that, custom dimensions can be applied to almost any data set within the world of GA. So to give you an example, again, pointing to my slides, here's a screen that shows you the all pages report, which whoever goes into GA, is normally one of the first things you go into. You can see here in this red box that you can add a secondary dimension, and then you have your array of custom dimensions when you've got those configured, and you can throw those into a bunch, almost any of the reports within Google Analytics, which is awesome. You can also build custom reports as well and build things the way you want to with, drill downs and dimensions and different metrics and however you want to do that. And this is supposed to be a video to show you how easy it is to create a custom dimension in Google Analytics, but you'll never guess what. It doesn't work. So what I'm going to do instead is jump over that. My point is it's really simple, and jump over that and tell you about what happens after that. So once you've set it up within Google Analytics, there's a bunch of tinkering that you need to do within Google Tag Manager. But the good news is, I'm not going to leave you there. There's a bunch of resources that I'm going to put at the end of this presentation, which will help you to understand how to configure the basics of custom dimensions. Now, what I want to do is talk to you about precisely the ways you can use custom dimensions to get to that sweet goal, that evidence that we need in Google Analytics. So earlier in the story with Lucille and Jeremy Corbyn, we spoke about, I showed you a screen about error messages. And I want to talk to you about how capturing error messages in Google Analytics can be absolutely incredible for conversion, for SEO, for user experience. But, in the world of e-commerce, it could be the difference between winning a sale and losing a customer entirely. So use error messages to identify how many times each error fires the specific text and where within Google Analytics, right? So how powerful is that? Because as using GA, you'll be able to understand precisely where every single error message that's been presented to a customer has fired, how many times, and precisely on what page this has happened. So then you can use this really cool stuff to identify what errors are firing at the checkout, for example, and how many visitors are seeing this specific problem. Right? So this gives you an idea of how big or how small or how monumental a cock-up this particular error message has been for your audience, your visitors, your customers. So then you can start to answer questions like these. Are there errors that could be rewritten to improve UX and CRO, as per the example I've shown you earlier? What pages on your website display the most errors? Pretty important one. What errors are hurting conversions the most? Now, this is awesome, right? Because if you can prioritize your error messages by which errors are basically hemorrhaging your sales, boom, priority, evidence, data. You've got this picture starting to come together. So to give you a very specific example here, this is some client data. And I had a little panic attack there because I swore I saw some client information, but it's good. This has been sanitized, it's fine. But I want to show you these 4 error messages that the customer has been displayed, or you can see in their GA account. They've got 4. And the number 1 error message that caused the most amount of cart abandonment is, sorry, unrecognized username or password, have you forgotten your password? And this affected 36 users and 157 hits within the space of a week. So it's a pretty big deal. If this is one of the key reasons why someone's abandoning, that's a problem. So the solution here potentially is to have a conversation about opening up a guest checkout to stop these users from getting frustrated and going somewhere else because they can't log in. But this is the kind of insight that we need, that we want in the world of e-com, right? So capturing lost basket value in Google Analytics. I love this one. This has to be my single most favorite custom metric rather than custom dimension in Google Analytics. So as we said before, GA isn't great at reporting the sales that you have lost. As we said, this is pretty much the best you've got to go off. You've got some segments you can build, but it's always going to be like, a bit fluffy, right? But we want real granular stuff. We want to understand, where do we lose the most potential sales, not just at the checkout, but across the entire website. What does a slow website performance cost us? We already know as SEOs, as digital professionals, that site speed is constantly drilled into our head as like a really important metric, something that we need to make things fast to make them convert well. But you will be able to understand specifically what slow website performance is costing you, down to pounds and pence, which is awesome. How much cash are we losing due to that specific error message, the one I showed you earlier? So you can start to blend data together. So here, same client, same direction, still pointing to my slides. There is this error message that we spoke about earlier. Sorry, unrecognized username or password, have you forgotten your password? Has cost this particular client of mine £26,000 in lost revenue during that week. So if this isn't like, oh shit, we need to fix it now, I don't know what is, because you can basically say to this client that, look, you're losing almost £30,000 a week as a result of this error message. It's not entirely scientific in the sense that it's not guaranteed to be this, but you can start to build evidence and suggest there's trends and I want to say another word without evidence, but yeah, evidence to say that this particular problem, this error message, is costing you this much in revenue on a weekly basis. This gets your stakeholders to listen because it's hemorrhaging cash. It's hard, cold numbers. And this is powerful stuff. When you're trying to prioritize stuff, we're trying to get your stakeholders to listen, we'll get things prioritized. It's all super, super cool. So one question you may have, how does the lost basket value dimension work? Now, give me a minute because it's a bit tricky to explain. So I'm going to use a very poignant example. Okay, so let's say a customer has added, basically got a basket total of £100. They've added a bunch of stuff in their basket and it's totaled £100. And this is customer, let's say this is customer A. So customer A goes to the basket, goes to the checkout, completes their transaction. In this instance, the lost basket value would be 0 because they've completed the transaction, therefore no revenue has been lost. Now, customer B has the same £100 basket. They go to the basket, they go to the checkout. They may not go to the basket or checkout at all, but they've just added £100 worth of items to their basket. But what they don't do is they do not make a purchase. So as a result, at the point in which they close their session, the lost basket value is £100. And that's the difference. So when a sale is completed, it's 0. When a sale is lost, the lost basket value custom metric should be the number in the basket that they had before they closed that session, before they exited that session. And I hope that makes sense, but that's ultimately how it works. Then what you can do is identify certain behaviors, events, things that happened during that session that may have caused that lost basket value to have happened in the first instance. As we just said, inability to log in, an error message that basically says unavailable or error or something like that. The IT team can jump on quick because you've been able to say, hey, we've got a huge spike in the amount of money we're losing here. Go and fix it. We need to fix this problem. Right, moving on to the next one. I really should have gone for a wee before I started this. I'm absolutely desperate. Right, so capturing product stock statuses in Google Analytics. Is zero stock the reason why sales were low for specific lines? This is really cool because I remember working in-house for a number of years at many different companies in the world of e-commerce. And it was the horrible, not horrible, but there was always that weekly conversation in the trading meeting or the merchandising meeting, which is, why have sales dropped on this specific brand, line, category, search term? And we used to go as a merchandising team or as a digital team, go and spend a lot of time digging up data and trying to find why this would be the case. And what you could basically do without even going through any of that first is just identify from a Google Analytics point of view, if you can correlate the time in which sales dropped and which stock was an issue. Because that way it's kind of not your problem anymore, right? If you're driving traffic to the site through SEO, if you're smashing it from a UX and campaign point of view, if your paid search is doing things it should be doing, but the products aren't selling, first thing to check, hey, was this thing in stock? And if it wasn't in stock, when did it go out of stock? Because this can help you to identify trends in why things may not be performing as well as they could be. So yeah, is zero stock the reason why sales were low for specific lines? When an item has low stock, how does it impact conversion? So this is a slight difference, no stock versus low stock. So to give you a perfect example, I have a client, I worked in-house, doesn't always work, where low stock as a status on a website improved conversion for that specific item. And the reason why, as you can imagine, it kind of encourages people to buy through desperation, not desperation, but because like stock is low, it might run out soon. There's a kind of urgency to buy something now rather than wait maybe till tonight or tomorrow when you get paid because stock is low. So what we did for this particular client is we increased the low stock threshold from, say, I forget the actual numbers, but let's say theoretically from, say, 5. So when it gets to 5, it's low, to 10. So when it gets to 10, it's low. Now, as a result of that, it means that the low stock threshold will kick in sooner, which means the conversion rate improves slightly for those specific items. Doesn't work for everything, and it doesn't work all the time. But you can then look at GA across this data and find out whether low stock or any stock status that you have and how it's impacting conversion for specific items or holistically across your entire catalog, right? So this is a pretty cool one as well. Next, capturing promotional statuses in Google Analytics. And again, this is one I really, really enjoy. So how does a price reduction or offer impact conversion for these items? Because as the world of retail, and especially, you know, in the world of e-commerce, especially right now with brands struggling due to COVID, yes, I know it's a presentation. I had to say the word COVID. There was no way I'm going to be able to not get that in there. But like, how does a price reduction or offer impact conversion for these items? So everyone's feel pressure to kind of reduce prices. Actually, you'd be able to prove using GA data, just reducing the price actually have the desired effect. Does it increase conversion? Does it increase sales? You can use this custom dimension to then see whether that's the case or not. Even just nuance changes. Does a 3 for 2 work better than a third? Not necessarily in terms of conversion, but maybe things like average order value or average basket value or cost per sale. Like all of these things you can use in GA to try and build that picture and get the evidence together. It will help you to test, to experiment, to get a feel for what works and what doesn't. Even though technically it's the same level of discount, you know, a third off or 33%, which one is better? And again, GA can help you with that, providing you build these custom dimensions. So after all that good juicy stuff that I've spoken about, there are a few bad things regarding custom dimensions, custom definitions, should I say, as a collective of metric and dimensions. Here we go. So number 1, they can't be deleted once they've been added. which is a real pain in the arse, but I get why they've done it. The last thing you want to do is create something, it's all in your reports, delete it, and then, it gets messy. You only have a max of 20 of them across an entire property. Bastards. Like, it's a super powerful thing in Google Analytics, but they've capped it at 20. So you get 20 custom dimensions and 20 custom metrics to be specific. So 40 in total. So you're in a situation where if you've got like one or just a handful left, you're going to be like Donald Trump in this kind of picture, where in the sense that, you're going to be running thin on the ground. And the only way you can get around that is to go to like a GA360 subscription, which I think, don't quote me, but I think it ups that limit to 200. But then, of course, you're in a situation where you've got to hand over 6 figures to get that functionality. My point here is that be frugal, be efficient, make sure you're using custom dimensions as efficiently as possible. Don't just make them for the sake of making them. Properly plan it out. And make sure, you've been as efficient as possible in how you deploy those custom definitions, because you can get yourself in a situation if you use them and go wild quite quickly. But there is good news, because where custom definitions get ugly, then events get sexy, which is cool. Sorry, I changed the tab there because I was curious to know what the chat is saying, but I can't do that without losing the presentation. All right, cool. What was I saying? Yes. This slide, where custom definitions get ugly, events get sexy. So firstly, there is no limit on the number of events you can have, as far as I know. So like with custom definitions, you've got like 20 a piece for metrics and dimensions. With events, go wild, do whatever you want. But there are nuanced differences between the two. And those differences are, custom definitions can tell you what, and events can tell you when. This is just a kind of a, give you a feel. You can use them however you want, but this is typically how I approach it. So to give you some specific examples, you could have a custom dimension of like transaction type, customer type, stock status. Custom metrics would be transaction amount, number of transactions, item price, anything that's numerically based. Events is kind of a purchase they completed. They saved a quote, they added to a basket. So it doesn't really necessarily work so well. So it kind of helps you to give you an idea of the what versus the when. So an event is a when, a dimension is a what. But, this is just a guide. There are no hard and fast rules. You've got to adopt it to your situation, what it is you want to measure, but, be consistent in whatever approach that you have. Okay, so events can also be used to power goals, and custom dimensions can't, which may not necessarily be a deal breaker, but it's something that's worth mentioning. And the difference in terms of how you power custom definitions in GA versus events. So custom definitions, you have key value pair of your definition name, whether that's a metric or a dimension, and the value. And then in events, it's kind of like you need those 4 parameters. We don't need all of them. You need category and action as a minimum, and then label and value are kind of optional fields that you may or may not wish to use. This may not be even interesting to you right now. So I'm going to move the heck on to something a lot more interesting, which is the difference between events and custom dimensions in the world of reporting when you're actually using Google Analytics. So as we said earlier, custom dimensions and metrics, you can apply as secondary dimensions in your page reports and whatever reports you kind of want in here. While events, you normally go to events, overview, top events, that sort of thing, and build your integration in there. All right, cool. For an event, now I love this one. So we're going to talk about events a little bit more in terms of how you can use an event versus a custom definition, but this is one of my absolute favorites. So again, if you're distracted, if you're not listening to this right now, I get like it's hard, 40 minutes and banging on about stuff is hard, but just take one thing away from this. It needs to be this. I just need your attention for 30 minutes. Just tell your kids to shut up a little bit. Be careful if your significant other, you might end up with a slap, but my point is pay attention. For an event when no search, what? Should we try that again? Apologies. For an event when a search returns no results. So to use an example, AO.com. I wanted to buy some supercalifragilisticexpialidocious, and unfortunately, they didn't have any in stock, which is a real shame. But what that means is I could have found an event, well, not me, I don't work for AO, but AO could have found an event that looks like this, which is event category, site search, blends it all together, or puts it all in the same space, action, no results, label, the search term. You may wish to have a value on that if you feel that's going to be relevant to you. But the importance of firing this is this. You can then confidently answer these really, really powerful questions in regards to e-commerce sales, e-commerce conversion, product discovery, you name it, this is huge. Answer questions like this. What are the items that customers are looking for that we don't sell? Like, this is incredible, right? This is like market research. This is just trying to understand, or quickly being able to understand at scale, what are customers demanding that we could supply? To use another example, I'm going to let you guys look at this for a moment. Okay, just look at this logo on this page and think to yourself, actually, do you know what? If you are listening, I want to take a book out of Kirsty's, a leaf out of Kirsty's book, actually, and Azim kind of flagged me on this. So Azim, nice one. I want you to type in the chat real quick what you think this says in terms of how it's spelled. Type that in the chat for me real quick. I'll give you like 10 seconds. We'll just have like a weird 10-second awkward silence. But yeah, in the chat. All right. Awkward silences is hard, so let's not do that anymore. But my point is, type in the chat what you think that says. My point here is, this is a real life client, but no results for that particular logo you just seen was spelt in these different ways. And this is just 6 of like 50 different examples. Dalawa, Alawa, Dawa, Alawa, and Hua. You get there's no consistency here. But the actual spelling of this is this. All right, so there's no L, even though it looks like there is. That is a D around the A. Basically, what I'm trying to get at is it's a terrible freaking logo. But the point I want to make here is this is the world's second largest manufacturer of security cameras. This is a huge brand. And if you're working in a situation where you're selling fashion, you sell, what's that really expensive brand of trainers that everyone keeps buying at the moment? I wish I had an audience because they'd help me. You know what I mean? Like someone would shout it at my face, but it's like really expensive, exclusive, and no one can really spell it that well. My point is, where you have complicated names, complicated brands, complicated spellings, like this example, it really helps because it allows you to understand how people are searching the things that they want and the things that they can't find. But to go back to this example for a minute, it's spelt like this, but you say it like this. Dahua. Like, it's crazy, right? My point is, Chinese names can be difficult sometimes, and it's not just Chinese names, of course, it's everything. International languages are kind of hard. And then if you're getting started on this one, Daewoo, like, my point is, it's powerful. And you can be in a situation where you can answer very quickly using GA, using that one event, what misspellings are we not optimizing for, and how often are they searched? Because this way, you can start connecting people to the products, the misspellings that they want, that they just can't find, and end up going somewhere else to find them. What non-commerce queries are your customers searching for? Returns policy, how do I, when can I? Like, all of these searches that people may fire up in your website search, you'd be amazed at the sort of crap people can fire on these things. But my point is, so many e-commerce site searches are geared up just for product searches. But what about all the searches where people are just looking for advice, support, guides, information, your store opening hours, your coronavirus policy? Sorry, I said coronavirus again. But you get my point. Like, there's a lot of queries that people can search for that just aren't related to products. How can you optimize that experience? But you can take this further than just search, just site search. You can flag all of your empty categories too. And back at MozCon last year, I basically went absolutely ham on the Home Depot because I found about, I don't know, 7,000 categories that they have on their site that are just empty, that have no results in. Now imagine that. Every single category page is probably going to be a landing page. For the Home Depot, a big site, lots of demand, real powerful brand equity. There's a good chance that a lot of these categories that are getting traffic are going to be empty. Imagine, like, as a customer landing on this page for the first time. Doesn't feel great. But if you had an event that fired every time a category was empty, you can then pass that data to the merchandising team, the category teams, maybe the SEO teams, to start thinking, right, we either need to add products to this category, delete this category in 301, redirect it somewhere else, or basically just take care of it, right? Okay. Lastly, or semi-lastly, I want to give a shout out to Nathan Amory, and I hope I'm pronouncing the surname right, because this guy is a G. This guy is an absolute legend, and I will tell you why. He took this presentation, clearly made some mad notes, and basically what he's done is got away and built a Google Data Studio report based upon the custom dimensions I spoke about in this presentation. So for his client or for where he works, he's able to identify the errors that are firing at scale and precisely how much money they are costing him. And he can drill that down to whatever kind of definitions or dimensions he wants. This is incredible. So what I'm not going to say is go and ask Nathan for loads of tips, because, you know, I don't want to like send him loads of unsolicited DMs. But my point is to give you an idea on the, you know, what you can do with this information. It doesn't have to just be GA. It can be Data Studio, it can be Power BI, it can be whatever you want it to be. So yeah, there we go. Finally, links that I promised, they are here. Last but not least, be more Lucille. Thank you very much. I think that's me.
That was absolutely wonderful, Luke. And yeah, I think, you know, in the non-virtual world, you would have had a lot of interaction. I was watching the chat, and you can see it now. If you pop it open, people have been engaging
Brilliant.
with
I'm
you.
having a look now.
And chatting away and guessing at the name of the what, the who, the that was a very bizarre. Shows that brands and names matter. I'm going to start with one of the questions from the chat room, which is from Marit, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. And I'll literally read it verbatim to you. So how can you best track traffic to a certain topic or products? Would you recommend embedding the URL structure to put content in certain folders? What's your best practice for that?
Just so I interpret the question right, how to track, what was that again, sorry, Richard? Traffic
to certain topics or products. So you talked about the search box, for example, but you talked about category.
Yeah, content groupings can be awesome for this. So GA allows you to group content out of the box. You haven't got to use a custom definition for it. So if you have certain subfolders or certain, you know, a certain URL structure or certain things that happen on a certain page, then yeah, content groupings are really powerful for this. But you also must remember that you may even be able to leverage one of the standard out of the box GA dimensions anyway. So things like page title, GA records out of the box. So if you have something in your page title that maybe has the category in, the product name in, the certain price point in, the brand it belongs to, you can absolutely extract that and then use that in your segmentation if that helps.
Awesome. I've got a couple of generic questions. One, are sweet goals specific to GA? That's a joke, by the way. I'm
going to laugh. I don't know what the heck you're on about.
No, you used the word sweet goals a lot. It was brilliant. The phrase sweet goals. I love it. There's people looking through GA going, where is that? I like those. But more importantly, on a serious note, obviously, you know, the great thing about anyone in the analytics role here is you're the god of all the data and the insight, right? And you're presenting the facts and the truth to people. You know, how do you best, what tips do you have for presenting these findings to people in a way that doesn't cause friction? Because a lot of the time you're going to a product team and saying, look, guys, we're seeing something there you might not like.
Yeah, I love this question, because we can spend, as digital professionals, not just SEOs, we can spend so much time making data sexy, pretty easy to understand, whatever. But once people have looked at these reports, most times they just throw them away. They just end up in a drawer, they end up as a bookmark in someone's browser, and that's literally it. The thing that I would do is use the data to help you, rather than just feel the need to pass the data to your stakeholders, your dev team or product teams or your CEO, whatever it is. In the sense that if you find an issue, you document that issue in an email, a ticket, and you present the findings to that individual or to that team. Don't just give them that dashboard or that report, because it's going to lose its, what's the word? It's going to like lose its intensity. It's going to lose its impact. So use that data to help you, to then allow you to do the talking and the convincing and the, hey, we're losing big money here. Like, I remember being in a meeting once, yeah, many months ago, right? I remember being in a meeting where I was sitting in this weekly kind of merchandising meeting that we had, and it was just that same old, I'm going to swear, I don't know if I can, kids cover your ears, same old bullshit about, oh yeah, like, how you doing, Steve? Like, how are things? Yeah, how were the weekend, how are the kids? I'm like, hello, do you know we're losing 30 grand a week here? Like, do you not want to fix that shit? Or do you want to sit here and talk about all the same stuff we talk about? Like, should we take 10% off, like Colgate toothpaste? Because, do you know, like, we need to get to the stuff that's important. So my point here is, Give them the data that's going to prove your point rather than just give them the entire report. Hope that helps.
Yeah, and it helps it get to the point. And you touched on a variety of elements there, and it was, by the way, that presentation was structured amazingly well in terms of the flow and the story that went with it, and we're all full of seal right now. But where's the starting point? If you come into an organisation and there's a lot to deal with, where do you?
Yeah, the first things I look at are
what
the
are the first
easiest
things
things to win on with the least amount of effort. And I think that goes for any audit you're doing, whether it's SEO, whether it's kind of like a property kind of thing, whatever it is. Quick wins. Like, everybody loves a quick win because, one, it gets you over the line as the person with the authority and the know-how, gets you that kind of immediate, you've got buy-in already because you've been brought in as a consultant or you've been hired. But to kind of get those fixes implemented in a couple of weeks, that really moves the needle. It gets you the budget. It loosens up the purse strings. It puts you in a position of trust where people just go, yeah, it's whatever, man, do what you got to do. You're awesome, rather than the whole, let me breathe down your neck and check it all the time. So I would always say, and this is the reason why I talk about site search, because things you can influence on your site are a heck of a lot easier to change than things you cannot, such as, SEO is hard, right? It takes time. But if I can jump into a client and say, look, hey, I have found 3 or 4 search queries that yield 10,000 sessions or 10,000, unique searches every single month that are actually yielding no results at all right now. Let me go and fix that. Take me like an hour. Having a conversation with the product team. Let me fix those things. And then within a couple of days, they're making more money, they're winning more customers, they're improving the experience. One very perfect example about this, just to be brief, I have a client in the world of computer networking, and they sell racks and cabinets and that sort of stuff. But they had a number of searches for years that got unnoticed. We implemented this no results found event, and the search term was for rack drawers. So they sold every other part of a rack, the hinges, the sides, the vented, the power, everything, but they didn't sell the drawers. So we identified that there was a huge demand for drawers, but no results found. So I said to the product director and the product team, hey, you should probably build some of these. So they did that, and talking like £500,000 a quarter increase in revenue just from people searching for this stuff, and being able to offer a product. So these are the quick wins that are incredible.
Yeah, I like that. And look, I'm going to say you raised it first, the Corona thing. I do want to ask about that, and again, in a general sense. Over the last few months, have you seen a lot more focus from the companies you work with on analytics? Because my kind of belief is, obviously, things get hard for one reason, heading into some kind of recession in one form or another. It matters a hell of a lot more, and finding those opportunities that you've described. Are you seeing more of that pressure?
But to be honest, I insist on it, in the sense of when I work with a client, I will not, unless it's unless it's like a budget conscious thing, but I'll typically try my best to not really fix anything until I've got analytics in place. Like, everyone's kind of got GA, but let's say 50% of the time you look, it's really old. It doesn't fire on all pages. There's problems and gaps in it. And then the last thing I want to do is then go and fire up a really powerful e-commerce SEO strategy. And then I'm like, oh, how do I measure improvement? Because your GA was flaky from the beginning and it's flaking out. So now I'm in a situation where I can't justify my return because the analytics isn't great. Yes, there's a 20% increase in revenue that you can see in your own KPIs internally off the web. But how do I justify that I was responsible or partly responsible for that increase? I can't. So I always insist on having an absolutely sound analytics foundation before anything else, because that's my proof, right? That's what I need. So yeah.
Perfect. Absolutely love it. That's been a wonderful presentation, Luke. Really, really appreciate that. I'm not sure if you're hanging around for different parts of the day later on. It'd be great if you could, because people can fire questions at you as they go through the day. And that's where we are for now. So thank you very much, Luke. Really, really enjoyed that. And I'm sure a lot of people are watching that on the follow-up as well when we send it out. It's now time for the lunch break. So you're in a nice cool room. No one else is. So we're all going to get some fresh air, some food. And if I can message to everyone to be back for 1:40 when the round 2, he's going to smash that stuff. I'll see you all.